All right, hello. So today we're going to be talking about how to pick the right startup. And we're doing this from the perspective of an early employee, like a founding engineer. And so there's two modes of thinking here. The first one is we want to think like a founder, which can be a little bit more qualitative. And then we also want to think like an investor, which is sometimes more quantitative. I think that a lot of sources and resources that I've found online, they kind of ignore this juxtaposition between thinking like an investor and thinking like a founder. As an employee, you need to evaluate, is this a good bet? While also kind of getting into that founder mode, taking ownership and being stubborn and dedicated to this idea. Now, getting emotionally attached and dedicated is usually not the best way to manage your portfolio, but you need this blend of thinking when you're looking about joining a startup. Okay, so let's start by thinking like a founder. For me, I like to ask a lot of questions and I like to really get to know the team, not just the co founders, but any early employees who might already be there, trying to understand who are the people involved, investors, advisors, other people who are going to have a say in decision making. And so, one idea that I've seen recently is something called a work trial in the past couple of years. So, instead of doing 7 rounds of leak code and DSA and all sorts of you know, trials and tribulations. You pass a couple initial rounds, and then you might work with work with the team in their office for a day or two. This could also be remote, and I think that it's tough because a lot of people kind of look at this and they're like, I don't want to work for free for a day or two. And to be frank, yeah, it's probably capitalizing on free labor, and a lot of people are going to very aggressively be against this. Startups might often be filtering out those types of people. If you're looking for the fastest way to make money today and you want to be paid for everything you do, it might not be the best fit. But on the other hand, I don't want to condone free labor. I want to talk about why this work trial is really good for you and potentially really good for them. I think it's polarizing, right? And so you're asking this big question. Can you envision yourself working on this idea with this team for 10 years, right? And it's kind of like an in-person date versus texting or a FaceTime. You learn a lot very quickly, which is really good for you. You get to polarize them. And then you probably in person or in this work trial, you're going to hit it off very fast, or both parties will know it won't be a fit. And so this will give you a lot more confidence in joining a team that's well run, and it will give you leverage when negotiating because they've de-risked you and they're like, hey, this is the person they want to bring on. And so I think it's a win-win over 7 rounds spaced out over weeks. And yes, it might seem like a bit of free labor. Well, not even seem, but it is. But I think this is generally better for both parties. And I think it's a step in the right direction instead of hanging candidates for, a dozen-hour take-home assignment and 7 rounds of like all sorts of garbage that are just spaced out. I think if you're looking for more resources around thinking like a founder and what these, what it could look like, I'm not the person. There's a ton of stuff online from Y Combinator. I mainly want to address what this juxtaposition between qualitative and quantitative thinking looks like. Okay, so now we've done our vibe check, thinking like a founder. For me, the next thing I like to think about is from an investment perspective. I want to be thinking about the ROI, but not just from a money perspective. I want to think about what future doors will this opportunity open? How can I grow as a person and as a builder by joining this team? That's kind of how I think about taking a bet on a startup. And so, as a side note, everyone has a personal risk tolerance. And so, if you are a little bit more established in life and you have dependents and you have people to take care of, maybe it's worth joining a Series B company versus a seed stage company that has product validation and is looking to scale. You can still do exceptionally well, and there's a lot of great opportunities for growth in a Series B company. Sometimes I think they just make a lot of sense. And oftentimes, you're still going to get fast tracked into exciting responsibilities. On the flip side, I'm a little bit younger, so I enjoy the seed stage opportunities because I personally love going from 0 to 1. And this idea of 0 to 1, if you've heard it before, no explanation needed. But if you haven't, there is a great book by Peter Thiel who talks about what this looks like. Okay, So another thing to think about when we're evaluating the business as an investor, we want to look at who are the other people or people in general who have invested in this business. The quality of the investors matters quite a bit. It matters as much, in my opinion, as the quality of the founders. And finally, their idea is perhaps a little bit less relevant to me. I think a good idea with stellar execution is better than a great idea with mediocre execution. And so you'll see this philosophy echoed by YC actually. So YC invests in people, and oftentimes their founders will pivot during the batch. So how else am I thinking about the startup as an investor perspective? Well, to be frank, I'm drawing on dozens of conversations with investors in my last startup, Founded Finance, and generally principles for managing risk and managing money. I've modeled this out in Excel, trying to reason about different outcomes. And I guess this can provide an idea if you're trying to understand like the capital return on investment. You want to model out, best case, worst case, like all of these different scenarios. But I don't think it's worth it. And it hasn't really helped me make any decisions. So when I'm thinking like an investor for evaluating startups, I like to wear an analytical hat and use first principles to reason, but I'm not trying to compute an exact ROI on my personal career growth that could happen here because things change very fast. A lot of how I'm evaluating it is comparing it to other opportunities, companies, and people. It's pretty tough to know what a good opportunity is if you haven't seen many things before. And so at the end of the day, I'm just following my gut, but I've been training that gut from, just, seeing a lot of things myself. And so my advice there, the kind of actionable takeaway is talk to a lot of people, read, watch YouTube videos, gather as much information as you can. And asking questions is, I like to think of this like an intern, right? I'm some kid and I want to learn as much as possible. And so when I go into, evaluating a startup, I'm just, I'm just there to be humble and be curious. Now, every startup is different, of course, and so I'm sharing guidelines and ideas. Some of these ideas might sound silly, and you should ignore them. They're not hard and fast rules. Uh, but one thing I will know: if you don't see a single red flag, you might not be looking hard enough, right? And I prefer the future problems I can see versus the ones in the dark. Okay, so who should join a startup? Well, that's for you to decide based on your personal risk tolerance, and maybe I'll talk about it in a later video. I wanted to keep this pretty short and concise. And so the main two ideas here to summarize are thinking like an investor and also thinking like a founder when you're evaluating these early startup opportunities. You don't want to lean too hard in one direction. And this is more of a finesse. There's a lot of, there's taste here. It's an art. And so if you like this video, please subscribe for more or give me feedback in the comments if you have any notes. And as a side note, I just took a video of me making coffee and making my early morning routine for something in the background. Alrighty. Thank you. Take care.